This will be another broken promise. We were told that if National got in, there wouldn't be changes, and lo and behold, now they're proposing some changes. I don't agree with them. I think just because you're a part-time worker doesn't mean you get crook part-time. And the result of that is if you are crook and you've got to go into work, you'll make other people sick, and that's going to affect the workplace. There's a reason.
That's actually a really good point. When I said that, he said some good things like, what does a boss want? Does a boss want someone out for a day and have to figure that out? Or does a boss want, and Chewy talked about this last week, does a boss want that sick person to come in and knock out the rest of the team and impact the next 2 or 3 weeks of work in that workplace? Any kind of serious boss will not want to knock out the workplace for 2 or 3 weeks. Any kind of penny pinching boss or someone who doesn't care about their staff, I guess that could be a different story.
And we have sick leave, particularly when you consider that many part-time workers are parents.
Yes.
And so the possibility of having to look after a sick child is there as well. So it doesn't quite make sense. If you look at it from an hours perspective, if you're working 20 hours and you claim a sick day, you only get paid for that half day that you were going to work. It's not like the employer has to pay for the full day. So in that respect, from an hours perspective, it's already relevant to how much you work.
Yeah, Chris, I'll bring you in here because a lot of our viewers are writing in and saying exactly the same thing in terms of, as Kieran has pointed out, just because you're on part-time doesn't mean you get sick part-time. So many people are writing into us about that. So, why does it need changing?
Yeah, so the first point is we're committed to keeping 10 days sick leave, which we...
That's what I'm saying. He says it over and over again. We're committed to keeping... Well, hang on, but you're changing it. We're committed to keeping it. Yeah, but you're not... Okay, so you're keeping it, but you're not keeping it the same. You're keeping it, but changing it. Like I'm keeping my car, but I painted it a different color and all the wheels have been taken off, but I'm keeping the car. But it looks different. It operates differently. Yeah, but I'm keeping the car. Okay, so you're keeping 10 days, but whilst you're keeping it, you're also changing it.
Keeping. Second point is this is just a discussion document which looks at a whole range of changes to the Holidays Act and the way sick leave works, and any small business out there, in fact any big business, knows the Holidays Act's a complete nightmare, so we're trying to sort that out as well. The proposal is basically if you work 10 hours a week, and there's some, I encourage people to read the discussion document because there's some actual practical real life examples of this. If you work 10 hours a week, you're entitled to your 10 days sick leave. You get 4 times as much sick leave as someone who works full.
So there's another answer, eh? And that's to give full-time workers 40 days of sick leave a year. I'm just saying that would also solve the problem. But if you're looking to solve the problem, that would also solve the problem of evening it out. But what he doesn't actually do is then go the other way, right? He doesn't go, so if you're only working, 10 hours, then you should only get 2.5 sick days a year because that would be proportional. If you're working full-time, 40 hours a week, you get 10 days. Therefore, if you're working 10 hours, then you're only entitled to 2.5 sick days a year. They don't mention that though. They just keep going on about 4 times. Full time. So you work a quarter of the hours, you work 10 hours a week. So you, in a full-time job's obviously 40, you get the 10 days sick leave. Someone on 40 hours a week working a full-time job, they get the 10 days sick leave as well. So the proposal is just basically, should we pro-rata it in the same way that annual leave's pro-rated? So in other words, should we give someone doing 10 hours a week 2.5 sick days a year? That's what they're asking. That's the reality.
When you accrue annual leave, if you work part-time, 20 hours a week, you get half the annual leave pro rata as the person who works full-time. So it's, I think, pretty straightforward, to be honest. It's just a proposal, and it's just to try and help business out there and make it easier for them to administer. We've had a lot of feedback from small business in particular.
Oh, look at Jackson Media. You gorgeous hunky yunk, you. So if I work a 70-hour week, look at that. Okay, pro rata would mean close to 20 sick days. And I'll tell you what, Jackson Media, if you are working 7 hours a week, you probably need 20 sick days. There you go. Perfect. Good question. Should be asked. I missed it, but I will own that as my own now, Jackson. So nobody say they saw Jackson say it first, and then I can pretend that was my idea.
About how difficult it is, the way the system works at the moment. So we'll put it out there, see what people think about it. But I don't think it's a broken promise. It's just a sensible proposal.
Well, he said they weren't going to touch the 10 days. They are. This is why he's having to say, well, 10 days are still there. 10 days are still there. But no, we know. We know.
Kieran, I'm gonna leave you to answer that, Kieran, because the Prime Minister did say in August last year that the 10-day sick leave wouldn't be touched. Chris is saying actually that 10 days is staying. What do you make of that, Kieran?
Well, I think there's been so many broken promises that they're now having to quibble over what he meant when he said it.
And this is the thing, right? And this is the thing where we're talking about the Holiday Act and stuff, and there's a distrust. And there's a distrust because they aren't keeping their promises. And this, for example, we're going to talk about this a bit later on, this when it comes to the treaty referendum, if they're breaking these promises, they've promised not to take the treaty referendum past the first reading. That's what they've promised. But they also promised not to touch 10 days. There's other things they promised that they swiftly moved away, and their excuse for moving away was, well, coalition. And the treaty's principal bill is, coalition. It could be the same reason they break their promise.
Said he wasn't going to change sick leave entitlements. And this is changing sick leave entitlements. Now, a full-time worker will still be entitled to 10 days, as they should be. I'm of the view that a part-time worker should be entitled to their equivalent. Now, as I said, if you look at it in hours, they're not taking a full day off. If they're crook, they shouldn't go to work because they will make other people sick. That's the whole idea of sick leave. If you're not well enough to go to work, you shouldn't have to. So they're either going to make other people sick or they're going to miss out on wages just because they're part-time. And the thing that I thought of last night when I saw this come on the news was, if somebody has had mental health problems and are easing their way back into work, they will do so most likely through part-time hours.
Yeah.
And we want to be able to ensure that they take the care that they need to get back on track. Now, those people are facing having fewer days than other workers. That's not going to help their recovery. And I think that's pretty short-sighted.
Yeah.
I'd just encourage people to read the discussion document. I mean, there's some examples in there. There's an example, I think that's from a dental hygienist. 2 days a week.
Remember what we've said before, and remember this every time you hear them talk. They always go to an anecdotal example. I'm sure there are people who getting a pro rata version of sick leave might work better for, as Jackson said earlier, and others are saying, well, if I work a 50-hour week, do I get more? Maybe that's going to be a thing. I suspect it's not, funnily enough, but maybe. But what they do is they always go to an example, an anecdotal example, which is an extreme. And he's about to give us one. And what I want to know is that the rule, Bish, or is that the exception? Because when we make legislation, we legislate for the rule, not the exception. No, because the exception, some of the exceptions are going to always fall through the gaps, good or bad policy, right? Not okay is going to happen. But the way we make policy is they cover a rule for most, not changing policy because of one. So have a listen to the example and just think, how many of these are there in the country? If this is the reason you're changing the law, how many of these people are actually in New Zealand?
There's an example, I think that's from a dental hygienist, 2 days a week at one practice, 2 days a week at another practice. They get the 10 days sick leave at both practices, and it racks itself up. So
how many people? How many people is that? They work 2 part-time jobs at 2 dental surgeries and get 2 lots of, how many? Handful? It's not the rule. It is the exception.
Look, there's a lot of anomalies out there, and no one's saying that people shouldn't be entitled to sick leave. I want to make that really clear. It's just the way the system works with part-time work and things like that. So, look, it's a discussion document. We'll have a look at it, see the feedback, and go forward from there.
At its heart, I think, is an assumption that there are thousands of people out there taking the mickey and having sickies. And we all know that there is a risk that some people do that, but those that aren't the type to do that sort of stuff are potentially getting penalised. Most New Zealanders, if they're well, go to work, and if they're crook, they stay home. And
and I mean that's the thing, isn't it? I'm sorry, I knew that Pulisiki work was coming up, but it still made me gag because it's pretty funny. He's a pretty funny dude. He's working on his bumper stickers for the next election, I think.